Hello, my name is Sage, and today I wanted to speak a little bit about Cormac McCarthy's book, All the Pretty Horses, and I wanted to mostly touch on the relationship between man and horse, freedom and control, and kind of just how those relate. So before we get into all the horses, it's important to do a little bit of a synopsis of the plot so that you can understand. John Grady Cole is the main character. He's a 16-year-old Texan boy living on a ranch with his recently divorced mother. She's looking to sell the ranch, and he's not very happy about this because he's very connected to horses. It shows up from the beginning of the story right to the end. He feels a connection. He wants to be a cowboy. He's very against this decision. Ultimately, he decides to run away, essentially, down to Mexico to find himself and become the cowboy that he knows he is. The Pretty Horses is a coming-of-age story. It's got very mature content in it, along with very immature choices. The one thing that remains consistent throughout the entire story and almost every single paragraph is the importance of horses to John Grady Cole and also the storyline as a whole.
What he loved in horses was what he loved in men, the blood, the heat of the blood that ran them. All his reverence and all his fondness and all the leanings of his life were for the ardent art, and they would always be so and never be otherwise.
That quote is from the third page of the novel. You can really see that McCarthy really gets straight into establishing the relationship that John Grady feels towards horses. He really respects them as like a life force. He sees the history behind them. He wants to continue living this lifestyle that puts the horse first almost. Especially in the 1950s, where this book takes place, this type of lifestyle was starting to disappear, or at least people were trying to move on from it, looking for this the golden age kind of white picket fence type lifestyle. He wants to kind of go back in time almost to when these horses were a lifeline for many people. And he still sees them that way, which is very mature of him and is further reflected throughout the story when you can see it in his like stoic nature, that maturity and understanding of the world around him.
He watched while John Grady walked up to the animal and tied a 12-foot length of rope to the hackamore. Then he led it through the gate, out of the potrero and into the corral, where the horses would be ridden. Rollins thought the horse would shy or try to rear, but it didn't. He got the sack and hobble ropes and came up while John Grady talked to the horse. He hobbled the front legs together and then took the McCate rope and handed John Grady the sack. And he held the horse while for the next quarter hour, John Grady floated the sack over the animal and under it and rubbed its head with the sack and passed it across the horse's face and ran it up and down and in between the animal's legs, talking to the horse and while rubbing against it and leaning against it. Then he got the saddle. "What good do you think it gonna do to waller all over a horse that away?" said Rollins. "I don't know," said John Grady. "I ain't a horse."
So this paragraph here kind of establishes John Grady as a skillful horsebreaker. He's able to do it with ease, with skill. What's interesting about this paragraph is that when asked why he's doing something by Rollins, he responds,
"I don't know. I'm not a horse."
Which is interesting because you can see how he's able to tame this animal. He knows what he's doing. But when asked to specify, he states that separation between him and the horse. He knows that he'll not ever truly be able to understand the animal because it's its own being with its own spirit and its own soul. The text here kind of has a thematic relevance towards the book. When discussing the notion of freedom and control and how that's portrayed through the story. Following John Grady, he's able to break the horse and he's skilled at it. He uses patience, care, he understands the horse, what the horse needs. However, he also acknowledges the fact that he'll never truly be able to understand the horse. The difference between him and other characters, other horsebreakers, other cowboys, is that he accepts this. He doesn't see it as a challenge. He sees it as a state of being and a difference between the two that should be respected.
He spoke of his campaigns in the deserts of Mexico, and he told them of horses killed under him, and he said that the souls of horses mirror the souls of men more closely than men suppose, and that horses also love war. Men say they only learn this, but he said that no creature can learn that which his heart has no shape to hold. His own father said that no man who has not gone to war horseback can ever truly understand the horse, and he said that he supposed he wished that this were not so, but that it was so.
So, horses are a mode of transportation, but they're so much more than that. For a cowboy, it's their livelihood. You cannot survive in the desert without your horse. They're animals. They have souls, blood running through their veins. They're not a creation of man, and they need to be respected as that. When he says that no man can truly know his horse unless they've ridden together in battle, it's kind of displays this complicated relationship where, though they're both spiritually independent, being brought to that primal instinct, defending yourself, killing others, it brings out a side that's not often seen and hopefully never be seen again, but brings the two closer in a way that can't be replicated in any other way. Experiencing that state of being is the only thing that can truly bring the two together, and it will bring the two together, and they'll be together as one. And he continues on to say that his father said he supposed he wished that it were not so, but it was so. It kind of addresses that need to own something for a human. You want to tame the horse, you want to break the horse, you want the horse to answer to all of your calls, do everything you say, but at the end of the day, it's still a wild animal, and that relationship is built on trust and a mutual understanding of one another.
Rode on slightly before him sat a horse, not only as if he'd been born to it, which he was, but as if were he begot by malice or mischance into some queer land where horses never were, he would have found them anyway, would have known that there was something missing for the world to be right, or he be right in it, and would have set forth to wander wherever it was needed for as long as it took until he came upon one, and he would have known that that was what he sought, and it would have been.
So this paragraph here not only reinforces John Grady's connection to horse, but his belief that a horse is innately connected to nature and belongs in nature and not humans. He respects it as an individual, and because he respects it as an individual, the horse therefore respects him. The relationship between him and his horse isn't built on ownership or necessity. It's built on mutual understanding and reassurance.
He touched the horse with his heels and rode on. He rode with the sun coppering his face and the red wind blowing out the west across the evening land, and the small desert birds chittering among the dry bracken, and horse passed on, and their long shadows passed in tandem, like the shadow of a single being, passed and paled in the darkening land and the world to come.
So that is the very last passage from the entire novel, and it really shows that entire story, everybody that John Grady meets, everything that happens. Him and his horse have a special connection. They are the only two that are left, and they go off together alone. Horses are deeply personal to John Grady. They reflect his freedom, his identity, his skills and dreams, but they're special to him in a way that is still respective of their personal identity. He respects them as what they are, and that is animals and individual beings. They're not his property, and he doesn't want them to be his property. He wants them to respect him, and he does respect them.